You know what's strange? Some of the most intelligent, emotionally aware people you'll ever meet are also some of the most exhausted. Not from doing too much, but from thinking too much. They replay conversations that ended hours ago. They map out scenarios that may never happen. They lie awake at 2 a.m., not because something went wrong, but because their brain refuses to stop asking, what if? And here's the psychological paradox at the heart of this. The very cognitive habit that makes someone thoughtful, careful, and empathetic is the same habit that quietly drains them. Today, we're going to explore the psychology of people who think too much. What's actually happening in their brain, why it develops, and what it really means about who they are. Let's start with what researchers actually call this pattern. Psychologists refer to it as maladaptive rumination, a tendency for the mind to circle back to the same thought loops repeatedly, especially around uncertainty, past events, or social situations. Studies out of Yale and the University of Michigan have consistently shown that people who ruminate aren't doing so because they're weak or anxious. In many cases, they're doing so because their brain is exceptionally good at pattern recognition. It's always scanning, always processing, always looking for meaning. The problem isn't the intelligence. It's that the system never gets a signal to stop. Neurologically, this comes down to a structure you've probably heard of, the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain responsible for planning, analysis, and self-reflection. In overthinkers, this region tends to stay highly active, even during downtime. Meanwhile, the default mode network, which is the brain's background processing system, keeps generating internal monologue. The result is a mind that's essentially always online, always auditing, always drafting responses to conversations that haven't happened yet. What's fascinating is that this pattern usually doesn't start in adulthood. For a large number of overthinkers, the habit begins in childhood or adolescence, often in environments where outcomes felt unpredictable. When a child grows up in a household where moods shifted without warning, or where mistakes had disproportionate consequences, the young brain learns a very logical survival strategy. Think ahead. Anticipate everything. If you can predict what's coming, maybe you can protect yourself. Overthinking, in this light, isn't a flaw. It's an adaptation. A very smart nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Now here's something interesting to pause on. Not all overthinking looks the same. Psychologists generally identify two distinct types. The first is reflective rumination, where the person turns inward to understand themselves, process emotions, and make sense of the world. This version, when balanced, can be a genuine strength. It's linked to higher emotional intelligence and deeper self-awareness. The second type is brooding rumination, a more passive, often distressing pattern of dwelling on problems without moving toward resolution. This is where overthinking starts to cost people, in sleep quality, in decision paralysis, in social anxiety that builds from overanalyzing every interaction. The tricky thing is that most overthinkers oscillate between both. A single moment of reflection can slide, almost invisibly, into a spiral. And because the thinking feels productive, because the brain is actively engaged, it can be genuinely difficult to notice when you've crossed from processing to ruminating. Cognitive psychologists describe this as the illusion of mental progress. The mind feels like it's solving something, but it's actually just looping. And this is where dopamine becomes part of the picture. Your brain releases small amounts of dopamine during the act of problem solving, even imagined problem solving. So when an overthinker runs through a scenario, analyzing every angle, constructing mental arguments, the brain is partially being rewarded just for the activity itself, not for arriving at an answer, just for thinking. This is why telling someone to just stop thinking about it is neurologically naive. The brain has a chemical incentive to keep going.
If you recognize yourself in any of this, if this felt less like a video and more like someone finally saying aloud what you've quietly thought for decades, then you probably already know what I mean. While I have you here, it would genuinely mean a lot if you subscribed. There's also a join button on the channel if you'd ever like to directly support more of these deep dives. And check out some of my other Psychology Simplified videos on the screen. I think you'll enjoy them.